Um, as you may know, I'm recording these fireside chats as the agent, and I'm just gonna, you know, continually go through this process as I, you know, feel, I guess you could say, and kind of just provide my insights, provide what I saw in the market today, as well as some potential updates. So basically, we could start with how we started off today, and we started off with getting some existing home sales data, right? I believe it was existing home. No, it wasn't existing homes actually. It was the if I may, it was it was new home builds actually. If I'm not mistaken, the new home builds was the big play for the day, or the bigger news event for the day, and that kind of got overlooked. We just kind of just came to the consensus that yes, the housing market is cooling right now. We got rates taking a little bit of a dive since the recent highs, right? And that was one of the bigger portions, right? As well as like in terms of leading up into this, right? It was building permits and housing starts in June, which was the news that came out pre-market today, 8:30. I wouldn't say it necessarily rocked anything, right? It's something to keep in mind as we went through the progression of the day. And it actually was essentially the bottom of the pre-market roughly when it dropped at about 8:30. But you know, we were taking a look into the first few companies to report earnings, as the main setup, and yesterday's video, or late last night or early this morning, if I should say, video, I mentioned the possibility of of what could have happened in the market based on past probabilities and so on. And in all reality, I would not say I was prepared for this move. This squeeze that we saw to this morning or today in the markets was pretty insane. To see a 2.5% move, I was not expecting that at all. I was saying potentially a move up to catch 80 to 90 basis points, maybe, right? That was like the best case scenario for the upside, in my opinion, which is why you see this yellow line here. But I was mostly or mainly looking to see if we would continue to sell off. And the main thing that I'd say that stopped us from selling off was earnings. It seemed as if some of the companies that when they came out with earnings today, they started to look at the scenario as like, hey, this isn't too bad, right? So a lot of the so for example, I believe it was Hasbro pre-market that came to it, that started reporting as like alongside the rest of the financials that haven't finished at least yet, and we ended the day basically up across the board, right? So the Dow Jones up 2.4%, NASDAQ 3%, S&P 2.7%. And if we want to go into bonds, or if we want to add bonds into it, obviously it went down because it was such a strong buying day. But it's kind of crazy just to see what. But what I'm getting from this is essentially like we've seen tighter monetary policies, we've seen higher inflation prints, and what it seems as if corporate earnings are showing that these companies are able to navigate these scenarios. Hasbro beat market estimates for their quarterly profit, a toy company. Said and said, right? Said and done. And that's kind of like very much the interesting part of this setup. And if we continue to try and potentially look at the rest of the the earnings, right? So we had Ally, Citizens, Hasbro, like I mentioned, J&J, Lockheed Martin, Signature Bank, Silvergate Capital, Truist as well. That was before the market, and then at close, the main one at close, that was a big one to kind of look at was Netflix. That was what everybody was interested in to see Netflix do, and Netflix did basically they did pretty good, right? So if we look at Hasbro, if we look at this data point here, where let's see if I can try and grab this to show you all as well. Maybe it's here, but Hasbro turned a profit. It wasn't necessarily a large profit, but it was something. Just let's see if the airdrop will work. Okay. And I'll throw that here. I guess we could do that, but all right. So, we could look at this scenario and we see Halliburton up 36% year over year. I don't even actually know that business or what's entailed within that business, but great for them. Hey, 36% year over year is amazing. Hasbro dropped 1.3 or was able to drop a 1.3% year over year profit. And Johnson & Johnson was able to give us 3%. Lockheed Martin coming in at negative 9% profit year over year. I believe that's pretty interesting, seeming that what happened with, well, maybe not so much interesting, because I guess Biden already confirmed that we're not gonna super militarily help Ukraine. But hey, I guess that's that scenario. And then you could look at some of what happened. As well as Truist showing 1%. Manpower minus 3.9. Novartis AG negative 1.4. I'm not even really familiar with all these businesses and what they provide to the market, to the landscape, but that's interesting. And then if we were to take a look at as well the after the close earnings, that's a pretty big take there. Cal Maine Foods 69% year over year profit. Hope Bank Corp positive 12%. Interactive Brokers showing negative 13. JB Hunt Transport positive 32% roughly. Netflix giving us a 8.6, basically 9. United Comms Banks 21%. Pinnacle Finai, probably another financial entity or bank-like entity, positive 17%. So that's really interesting because with these and everything that is negative is not super negative. Like the highest one was Lockheed at negative 9.3 in today's earnings, and maybe it's because no, not even, but they adjusted guidance for this scenario a few months back. I'm sure most companies adjusted their guidance, right? But they've kind of come in at a little bit better than the guidance in a lot of the scenarios. So that's the super interesting part, no doubt. No doubt there at all, right? The S&P Capital IQ consensus for Netflix coming in at 3.2 or the actuals coming in at 3.2 after the consensus was aiming for 2.95. Yeah, it's showing some positivity, within the cracks of the doom and gloom that I mentioned yesterday. So they're saying that, hey, out of all these companies that did go ahead and, show us their books and show us what's going on, things aren't looking too bad, right? All in all. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for sure. How do I get rid of it? I don't even actually want it like this. I'm sorry, I don't know how to get rid of this, but you'd expect me to know how to get rid of this, but I guess, oh well, it is what it is. So I guess we'll just keep that there for now, but I don't want to restart the trading view and all other stuff, but I did also want to go over what I saw today in the markets. So let's try this. No, that's not gonna full screen it. Jeez, man, that's actually annoying. See, so now I gotta do all that, and then now I gotta go and add another window, and then bring up trading view again. So yeah, I guess that'll work. Okay, it was fast enough. But so with the slightly positive news that we got, and it really showed a big push here for the markets. If you look at the S&P, like I mentioned, we were up about 2% this morning, or just today alone. And I want to also get into potential what can we see tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and start aiming for that now. But we saw some companies like I mentioned, Hasbro coming out, saying that they came through and beat estimates for their quarterly profits, and that stock was trading slightly higher today, as opposed to obviously being lower. But the main thing that was really interesting was, I wouldn't even say that today's news was super like very monumental, right? Like in terms of the justification of a 2.7% movement. That's what I'm trying to understand, or we're trying to get at today, right? So whether this will hold or not is the ultimate question, really. But if we get down into the nitty-gritty technicals of the scenario, we could kind of see where it came from, right? And sometimes I talk about, trading backwards, where you see the end result of the price action, and then you try to piece together clues that breadcrumbs that could have been left prior, using the prior price action, the same chart that we looked at last night, to try and see if that one could have told you something that would have led you to that insight to be able to grab this potential move, or even just visually get an understanding as to what's occurring, so that you can use that next time around as you see price actions develop and you see charts forming and so on. So I don't believe this array was on my video last night, but I noticed that this morning, as we were already up, right? So because we were up, we held this all last night, and I pretty much was graphing or trading or going over this video yesterday at around this time period where we were still here holding this support, right? And as we continue to move up, I was like, hey, maybe we'll have a green day overall, or we'll probably get rejected around this 38.70 level, and then we see it push back down towards the 38.30s and so on. But as we could see, it took a different time frame. We see it pushed up, got rejected off of it, and then came back stronger than ever, as we went through the pre-market, and then I'm like, okay, well, I was not expecting that, but sometimes you don't expect stuff to happen, and they do, and you just have to be able to roll with the punches and kind of adjust your game plan because of that, right? So what I did was I decided to, and I could take a look real quick, but all in all, I was able to capture about, I believe 120 or so basis points, all in all. In the overall movement, just catching it from. Let's see if what we could find here. But catching this movement all the way from around, like once we bounced off of this range, roughly. Let me see, where's my phone? I'm actually not sure. Oh, well. Right, but we were. Let me see. I'm going to look into a smaller time frame because I most certainly did not trade through this whole move, right? I didn't hold this whole 2% move. That's one, not necessarily, that wasn't in the cards, and two, that was kind of like a little bit unrealistic to say to myself in terms of the way I trade, at least, right? But I saw these candles, holding in the first 30 minutes or so, and then shortly after we broke out, right? And we had some great strength. And if we even look at volume, we saw volume hold strong as well over the average, and that was what caused us push up, right? So in my first position of the day, I believe I captured 69 basis points in total, and that was about a move from this range here as we broke out and continued to push through. And I was really aiming for this range, this top right here, right, where we saw some potential resistance, where things may slow down and potentially consolidate. And that was what I aimed for. And that was a great, rich reward and a great setup all in all. And then shortly after, we basically came through, pushed through that as well, and continued to march on up. And I also did not catch the latter end of it either. The latter end of this move either. And I dropped another one. And I'd say I caught the second movement was this overall movement here. So from 39.15 or 16 or so, right, after we came back, bounced off the previous resistance, now support, and we pushed forward. I said, hey, maybe I could capture another 60 points or so, or 40, 50 points or so, trying to, catch this after we've retraced here. And why? Because if we zoom out onto another time frame, we see this wedge, and this was what really got me, right? I mentioned yesterday a double bottom, but then we saw the wedge come out, and once we broke above this wedge, I missed this first portion, getting from yellow to the top of the wedge, right? But then the breakout of that wedge, I was also not necessarily even looking for a position at that point in time. And then I said, okay, well, maybe now that we're out of this wedge and we seem to be strong out of this wedge, maybe we'll come back and test the highs of to where this destination is over here. And that's about roughly what occurred, right? So nothing super insane today. The market ripped 2.3% or so. SPX specifically, I was able to capture a nice portion of it, probably about a total of a third of that move. But all in all, super grateful and super happy to remain methodical and consistent within my decisions. There was no emotion, I'd say, on my end to force a position, or I didn't feel that emotion at least. So that was great. Now, the next question starts to become, well, what the heck's going to happen tomorrow, right? So if we take a look at what's happening or what's on deck to happen tomorrow, we got the Netflix earnings that already came out. They gave us some insight into the bigger tech, right? And a lot of people are kind of banking on that. They're banking on bigger tech to be something. So before the open tomorrow, we have Abbott, Biogen. Looks like we're getting a lot of healthcare next. Finishing up alongside the Healthcare Services Group, M&T Bank, finishing up alongside of some of the financials early in the morning. And then we have, after the close, we got some of the bigger ones. Discover, let's see, Kinder Morgan. That's going to be interesting, at least to maybe get some insight in that energy sector. Tesla, ooh, that's going to be probably a mover. United Airlines, Tesla's earnings is probably going to be a mover in the QQQs. And the Las Vegas Sands, that may give us some insight into travel. And how is travel doing? Because we know that the airlines demand is heavy, but do we know about resort demand, right? Like, are these people just traveling and booking Airbnb? Or are they traveling and hitting up the places that, the legacy places, if you will, the Marriotts and so on? And maybe these hotels can start to pad their books as that demand kind of comes back to them, at least, right? So that's pretty much what occurred for the day. And I do have some stats right here for the residential construction. I wanted to share this with you all. The Census Bureau reports new residential construction statistics for June, and economists forecast a seasonal adjusted annual rate of 1.58 million privately owned housing starts, and 1.7% higher than May. And starts have fallen sharply this year and are at their lowest levels since April of 2021. So looks like people aren't necessarily buying homes anymore, and I don't necessarily blame them either, seeming that rates are on the rise. So that's kind of what's happening right now in the market. And kind of as for tomorrow, I'm not expecting much of a move tomorrow, for the main fact that we made this move today, a rather large one at least as well, and there may be some relaxed time, right? Some relaxed time in this setup, a retracement maybe pushing back to this breakout here, this 39 level. But also there may be the possibility that we push to this higher bound or higher trend line that I have as well. If we go to the daily, I could show you that as well. But this daily has been holding up this trend line, bouncing back and forth, whether it's resistance or whether it's from the support angle. But this daily up here at the 37.30, the 39.75, 39.80 maybe, yeah. Around that range, 39.85, would give or take 10, 15 points or so, as the next potential major resistance, if we don't already begin to see resistance within any economic events that come out tonight, or anything that'll really change and move the needle between right now and tomorrow open, right? So coming up, like I mentioned, we got Biogen's report. We got Tesla's earnings also, end of the day. We have the pharmaceutical, Abbott, and United Airlines as well, giving us potentially the strongest quarterly earnings since the start of the pandemic, I'm assuming, right? Or maybe it was during the stimulus time they shed good profits. I can't confirm that, really. And we'll just see what happens next from here, really. All I can continually say is remain methodical within your positions, make sure you protect your downside, preserve your capital, and make smart choices. So this is the agent signing out.